Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about control flow, and it's going to have things like conditional statements, so elif statements, if statements, else statements, and logical operators. So control flow is the order that is the flow in which your program is read. So generally, your program is read in a sequential order. So that means whatever comes first is executed, and then it reads the next line, runs that, goes to the next one, runs that, and it just goes in order. It goes from 1 to 12, reading it like that. So that's just the basic general sequence that it goes in, the control that goes in. But when you introduce something like a conditional statement, essentially what a conditional statement is, if this condition is met, then do something. If it's not met, then do something else. So what happens there is it doesn't, yeah. Well, let me show you. If I say if duck age equals 5, print duck is 5. Else print duck is not 5. So what it does here, when it comes to this line of code, first it'll go, okay, this is an if statement, and I'm checking it, is duck age equal to 5? If duck age is equal to 5, it'll run this code. However, if the duck isn't equal to 5, it will skip this line of code and it'll go straight to line 14, or whatever comes after this if statement. So it'll go to else instead, and it will print this instead. It will print duck is not 5. So in this case, that sequential order is disrupted. It goes according to this condition. So now if I change this, well, yeah, when I run it, the duck is not 5. But now if I change it to being 196, because I just changed the duck's age to being 196, it'll say duck is 196. There we go. Yeah. So, and if it reads this, right, then it'll look at this else statement and see that no, okay, this if statement was true. So then I don't need to worry about what to do if it wasn't true. This else statement comes only if something is not true. But since it is true, it just skips over the else statement and everything inside of it as well. So then it just goes to printing the duck age. So that kind of disrupts the flow, and that's what a conditional statement does. Now, as you saw, I the syntax that I used was I put in this if, I just typed if space something, a variable, some comparison between the variable and something else. So I compared the duck age, which is the variable, to the integer 196. And if they're equal, so this is how we represent equal in an if statement, then, so I use this colon to represent then, do whatever's inside of this, which this is referred to with this indent. So indents matter a lot in Python. That's how it knows that you're talking about, I want to print this stuff inside if, and nothing after this is part of if. Only whatever's indented is part of if. So the indents are important. Now, similarly, in the else statement, there is no condition that needs to be met. Else only runs if the if statement is false. So it's like an otherwise thing. Like, if the duck is 5, then print 5. Otherwise, print not 5. That's essentially what else does. All you do is else, colon, put the indent so it knows that whatever you're writing next is under that else statement, and then whatever you want. So I'm saying print the duck is not 5. Yeah, so that's using if and else. Now, let's say if the duck is 196, print the duck is 196. If, or otherwise, elif, the duck age smaller than 196, print duck is young. So elif essentially means first test if the first condition is met. If the first condition is met, it'll do whatever is inside this condition, whatever is inside this if statement, and it'll skip over everything that comes afterward. That's part of that if else structure. But if this first statement is not met, then it'll go to the next line. And the next line is elif. So elif is saying if the first one is not true, then check this condition. And if this condition is true, then do this. And then finally, you can chain this elif thing into being more options. So now you could say if the duck age is greater than 196, then the duck is older than expected. And otherwise, if the duck is not 196 and it's not younger and it's not older, then you can print the duck is not alive. Sure. Now, these are my logical operators. So logical operators are what I use as my comparison between two things. You can also refer to them as comparison operators. So when I want to say is something equal to something else, I actually have to use two equal signs, not just one. Because one is known as the assignment operator, which means it assigns the duck age to be 28. Now, if I want to ask whether it's equal, then I would use a double equal, because that's what the logical operator is. Then there are these greater than and less than symbols, right? And those are the other two operators that you can use. Of course, if you want greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you can do that as well. But you need to make sure that the equal sign is after the greater than or less than sign. Um, yeah. Then finally, there's also not equals. So if I want to say if the duck is not equal to 196, I could say duck isn't 196. And now, right now the duck is 196. And since I have this greater than or equal to, it says the duck is younger. But because it's equal to 196, it doesn't print this. If I did something like 29, now it won't be 196, and it just says the duck is 196. Another thing to keep in mind is when you run elif, right? Elif is also like an if statement. So if its condition is met, nothing after it will be read. At least nothing part of that if statement will be read. So it still, of course, prints what the duck age is afterward. As you see, it printed 203, but it doesn't check these other conditions. On the other hand, though, you need to keep in mind the reason we don't just use more if statements is if I did if duck age is smaller than or equal to, well, actually, this is a bad example. Say if it is equal to, and if it's less than or. So if we did this now, right? Now watch what happens. Uh, hang on, let's go. There we go. So now if I do this, if I have two if statements, first it checks, okay, if my duck age is not 196, print this. Otherwise, go to whatever is in my otherwise statement. Now here, because we just end with if and we start a new if, it pretends like that is the end of my if else structure because I never specified an else. So what it does is it checks this condition, and if it's true, then it'll run this. If it's not true, it won't run this or do anything else since I didn't specify. But even if this is true, it won't skip past this one. It will still check this one because I didn't put it as an elif. So this is not actually part of the same structure as this. These are two different if else structures. That's why you see the duck isn't 196 and the duck is younger than expected. Both of the statements are printed rather than just one. But because the duck is younger than expected, and then I put an elif, it doesn't print the duck is also older than expected because this is part of the same structure. If I changed it, now it'll print all three. Yeah, now it'll print all three. So it did both this if statement, it did this if statement, it checked for this if statement, which was not true. So instead it went to its else. So it did the if, and then the else of the other structure. Yeah. Sorry if that was a little bit confusing, but yeah.